Begin here. South Africans were taken by surprise this weekend when Eskom implemented Stage 4 power cuts and now Stage 2 this weekend into Monday. This after promising a weekend of no power cuts. On Friday, Electricity Minister Dr. Kgosientsho Ramokgopa said high stages of blackouts aren't indicative of grid collapse, but show tight control of the system. He was updating the nation on the implementation of the Energy Action Plan, and he joins me now in studio for more on this and a broader discussion. Thank you so much for your time, Minister. We do appreciate it.
Good evening, Heidi, and good evening to the viewers at home. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Great. Thanks for being here. I think we have a lot to discuss. But firstly, let's just start off with what happened this weekend. Many South Africans were so excited about the fact that we were not going to have load shedding, and suddenly we were moved to Stage 4 blackouts. And many are saying that this up and down of stages is really causing an inconvenience. Why was load shedding suspended and then Stage 4 implemented?
Well, maybe to start with is that we are making marginal progress, but it's significant. I mean, we did say that one of our primary intentions is to ensure that we improve the energy availability factor of the installed units at Eskom. I mean, if you had to measure the period since early May this year, we have registered 7 percentage points increase in the energy availability factor. Just to put it into context, 1 percentage point of EAF improvement amounts to about 477 megawatts. So if you talk about 7 percentage points, I mean, you are breaching 3,000 megawatts. You are about 3,200 megawatts. And in current parlance, that means 3 stages of load shedding. And I mean, on Friday, we breached the 60% mark of energy availability factor. And that's a target we had set ourselves for much later. And thanks to the excellent work that is done by the station managers, of course, led by the brilliant head of generation, Mr. Bekin Umal, of course, with the collective of the Eskom leadership. So the point we're making is that we are seeking to get additional megawatts onto the grid, first, and secondly, ensure the reliability of those megawatts. The point I've been making consistently is a result of what we call unplanned capability loss factor. So just the units tripping on account of many reasons. Hopefully I'll be able to share with you what we're doing about that. So once we get to stabilize, I think you'll see that once we make a promise that we'll be at this level of load shedding, of course we make the underlying assumptions to that prediction projection we're making, because it's also a function of demand. As you know that when you go into winter period, there's a significant surge on the demand side. And viewers will ask, but you're talking about 7 percentage point increases, but we are not seeing it in load shedding terms. That's coming down aggressively, because I did say it's an additional 3,200 megawatts. That gets eaten up, if you like, by significant demand, the spike in demand. I mean, the fact that for a period during the week in winter, you have had instances where there was no load shedding. I think that's a significant, it's a significant movement. Of course, not sufficient, but for us is what I refer to as a green shoot. I think you can see that there are lights and we're beginning to make the kind of progress that we've been projecting. And as I speak to you, that the projections we've been making were ahead of the curve much earlier than we had anticipated. It's because of the amount of work that we are investing in addressing the energy availability factor. And the picture is going to change significantly. Once we get back those 3 units at Kusile, it's an additional 2,400 megawatts, unit 1 to 3, and also you're getting unit 5, it's another 800 megawatts. So you're talking 3,200 megawatts. That's why I'm buoyant, emboldened by the kind of progress that we're making, and the fact that we are on track to deliver on the 4 units at Kusile, the 3+1, and that's why I'm saying that you are going to see significantly reduced amount of load shedding. We're getting closer to a stage where we'll say load shedding is behind us. But it's a function of a set of measures that we must introduce in addition to the EAF improvement, as we announced during the press briefing on Friday.
Yeah, let's speak about that EAF progress that you have made. I mean, many South Africans are watching going, it's just not good enough.
Yes.
We've been subjected to rolling blackouts for the past 15 years. It's becoming unbearable. People are actually dying because of this. And as much as you're saying progress has been made sooner than expected, we have seen how unreliable our generating units are. And as you and I are speaking right now, there could be a generating unit that breaks down, because we've also seen how maintenance has not been maintained at these power stations or kept up with. How satisfied are you with the progress that you've made with the energy availability factor, and how reliable is that? Because you're saying now we're at 60%. About 2 weeks ago when Eskom said we're at 52%. I mean, that's shocking, and it's still not good enough.
Well, to your earlier point, I mean, you're absolutely correct. I think residents have to be aggrieved, angry, and despondent about what we get to communicate. And that is something that we want to rectify, and we're going to rectify it by making sure that the lights are on consistently, because I think there's no degree of articulation and just sharing these numbers that is going to give confidence. I think the most enduring solution is to ensure that the lights are on all the time, as and when people need that. So what are we doing now? So you're absolutely correct that we have a problem with regards to units that are tripping. We have announced a set of measures. The first one is that we are drawing from a big pool of experience and competent engineers to go and work with the current cohort of leadership of station managers at the various stations. So working with the private sector through the platform of the Resource Mobilization Fund, 100 million has been made available by the private sector. So we're tapping on some of the most experienced engineers. Some of them have gone into retirement, some of them are practicing in other fields. So we're bringing them back. So we have that cohort. They are starting tomorrow, the 5th of June. And then we have prioritized stations that we think are going to give us the best returns. 4 stations to start with now. It's Kriel, Majuba, Kendal. Kriel, Majuba, Kendal. Those are the power stations that we have identified to help us to get out of this very difficult situation. And Matla is the 4th one. And we are confident that on Majuba and Matla, we should be able to improve by 25% the EAF, and of course Kriel and Kendal, I think it's about 12 percentage points. And we have been able to identify what are these areas that requires attention. I mean, they range from cooling towers to back filters. So for every station we have mapped what is the component that is notorious for bringing down the units. And we have been able to find a trend line over a passage of time, and we are able to register the amount of megawatts that we lose from the system as a result of the following failures. So when we go and recruit this expertise, it's people who are experts in those areas. So it's not just a general recruitment, but essentially it's around people who are savvy on the areas that they are notorious for taking out the units out of action. And then there are other measures that we are introducing, issues such as strategic procurement of strategic components. So there's something that we refer to as outage slips. So what that means is that the failure by Eskom to meet the promise of bringing back the units at the time that they had scheduled. So for an example, you take out the unit, you already can predict what are the components that needs to be fixed, and you say, I'm going to return it in 48 hours. In many instances, we are unable to return it in that period, and that's why we call it outage slips. On average, that accounts for about 2,800 megawatts. So that's about 3 stages of load shedding. And we know that the primary problem is around the degree to which we plan the removal of those units for fixing. You find that because some of them are big ticket items, long lead items, you need to have them at the workshop by the time you retrieve these components for fixing. So one of the things that we are introducing is to ensure that we accelerate that procurement by removing the middlemen and making it possible for Eskom to go directly to the original equipment manufacturer. And in this way, you are going to see that there's going to be a progressive improvement in relation to the energy availability factor and also the reliability of these units going into the future. If you come to think of it, we've got sufficient installed capacity, but we are not able to derive the amount of megawatts that have been installed as a result of these units failing. And that's why there's a laser-focused approach at the unit level. And of course, this kind of progression that we are registering is not by accident. Deliberate, we have planned it, and we are very, very much confident about our ability to make sure that we transition out of the darkness, and we are consistent in relation to providing quality uninterrupted power supply to the residents of the country.
Yes, especially because we pay for this service and we're not getting it. I want to speak about the possibility of a grid collapse. And I know you've said this is not going to happen. I mean, you've just spoken about the energy availability factor going up to 60%. But South Africans would say that there's already been a grid collapse. I mean, people now can't even watch this show and this interview because, I mean, on social media they were saying, unfortunately, we don't have electricity to watch this. Businesses have shut down. People have lost their lives. I had posed a question to you last weekend about a 3-year-old girl who sadly lost her life because all her oxygen machines that she was using to keep her alive died. Speak to us, and honestly speaking, Minister, about how stable our grid is. So you're telling us now the energy availability factor is back up. It's at 60%. We're sorting this out at generating units. But then tomorrow we're in stage 6. So how does our grid look? Can you confidently and honestly say and sit here and tell South Africans there is not going to be a grid collapse?
Well, just to make the point that all my encounters with the South African public have been honest. And I did say that also very transparent, and we welcome the robust engagement. And just once more to express our condolences to the young child who died, and I think that there could be others that are related to the failure of us being unable to provide the consistent supply and reliable supply of energy. And I must say that we are motivated by the desire to ensure that you don't have such incidents of resulting in fatalities. And that's why we want to redouble our effort, accelerate and build significant momentum in the resolution of the load shedding problem. I did make the point that, of course, people, when they are not watching this show, essentially means that they demand far exceed generation. And the system controller then balances this by denying people their right to have access to quality energy and introducing what you and I refer to as load shedding. And that's a measure and illustration of the alertness on the part of the system provider to ensure that we protect the integrity of the grid. And the point I want to make is that when you go to higher stages of load shedding, that does not mean that you are getting closer to grid collapse. What it simply means is that the system operator is doing everything possible to protect the grid. And just to share with you, I mean, just the philosophy that gets to be applied, there's about 2,200 megawatts of reserve margin. So that what the system operator literally almost puts it in his or her pocket. So that doesn't get to be dispatched. Is ready there to make sure that if there's any incident that requires us to engage that 2,200 megawatts, we are able to do that and essentially protect the grid. And I did say there are multiple gates of protection. The last time I checked, there's about 6 gates of protection to ensure that we are able to protect the system
and none
from
of those
collapse.
Gates have been breached.
We have not breached those gates. And the point really to be made that it's important that there's that appreciation. Of course, in any system, an engineering system, there's an inherent risk of failure in any system. And that's why I make the point about that is highly improbable that you are going to get to a grid failure. Of course, it could only happen on the transmission side if there's a major catastrophe, extreme weather occurrence, earthquake, a major flood that disrupts, if you like, our network. And because the network is so integrated that there's only going to be a single point of failure to undermine its performance and therefore result in what you and I refer as a grid collapse. But no, we are not there, and that's the point I keep on emphasizing. And yes, we do everything, our best, to ensure that there's a progressive improvement in the performance of these installed units. But we are also doing other things. In addition to just improving the performance of Eskom's installed units, we're looking at new generation capacity. We'll be going to stage bid window number 7, so we're looking to get a combination of PV and wind about 5,000 megawatts. We're looking to get 3,000 megawatts of gas. We're looking to get 1,200 megawatts of battery storage. We are looking to get 1,000 megawatts of what we get to import across the border. So if you to aggregate those, we are looking to get a new generation capacity of upwards of 10,000 megawatts, so that there's no sole reliance on Eskom. We know that with the reforms that have been introduced, Eskom is no more a monopoly, but it's a dominant market player. And that's why we are beginning to introduce other players, so that they are not just exclusively reliant on Eskom. And then there are other measures that we introduce as part of our winter plan to ensure that we are able to reduce demand. We have done our own modeling, computation. Of course, we know that households consume up to 16.5% of installed capacity in the country. At peak, they can consume about 35% of installed capacity, and anything between 30 and 50% of that 35% is on account of geysers. And that's why we are rolling out, if you like,
I want to speak about the geyser issue,
on the demand side.
Sorry to interject. I want to speak about the geyser issue because many South Africans are not impressed with that. They're saying they want to be able to have their geyser on at any time of the day. But let's go to a quick ad break. We'll continue our conversation with the Minister of Electricity, so do stay tuned.